When it comes to films, who doesn't love a good death, eh? And trust me, when it came to the films of 2021, there were some absolute belters. So let's not beat around the bush and start exploding it. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 best movie deaths of 2021. Number 10. Captain Boomerang, The Suicide Squad. Now, the marketing for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad gleefully reminded audience not to get too attached to the titular band of not-so-merry anti-heroes, a statement that was brutally backed up in its opening action scene. During the initial assault on the island, it's revealed that Amanda Waller secretly sent not one, but two teams to complete the mission, the first acting as expendable decoys and the other to actually finish the job. As a result, everyone in the first squad was wiped out, save for Rick Flag and Harley Quinn. Oh, and Weasel, of course. While it wasn't terribly surprising to see the likes of the detachable Kid, Javelin, and Mongal killed off during the opening battle, it was genuinely shocking for Captain Boomerang to bow out quite so soon. Given that Boomer was one of the few returning cast members from the 2016 movie, it seemed probable that he was returning for a fully fleshed out role rather than a mere cameo. He certainly got a fittingly memorable death, first being impaled by tree fragments and then getting torn apart by the rotor blades of a helicopter. The sheer shock value combined with the extreme gore and dementedly joyous look on Boomer's face makes this one of the best deaths in any DC movie ever. Number 9. Karen Nelson, Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills wasn't a great movie, but it absolutely delivered on the gnarly promises of its title, effectively serving up 105 sustained minutes of Michael Myers slaughtering his way across Haddonfield. This culminates in a devastatingly bleak Empire Strikes Back-esque cliffhanger ending where Laurie Strode's daughter Karen gets slain by the Shape. After Karen lures Michael into a trap where he's attacked by the Haddonfield mob, she returns to Michael's home to check out her daughter Allison, and then heads upstairs to check out the house. But just as she stands by the window in the bedroom of Michael's dead sister Judith, Michael emerges and brutally stabs Karen to death countless times. The end. Disappointing though the movie mostly was, it's tough not to respect the savage lack of sentiment here, setting the stage for an emotionally charged final showdown between Michael and Laurie in the upcoming Halloween Ends. It wasn't the goriest or most creative kill in the movie, but few deaths in the Halloween series have had this much visceral impact. Number 8. Duke Leto, Dune. Now, there are a number of memorable and brilliantly executed deaths in Denis Villeneuve's Dune adaptation, but none more so than that of Duke Leto, the father of protagonist Paul. Now, he ends up being double-crossed by Dr. Wellington, who incapacitates him and delivers him to Baron Harkonnen in order to free his own imprisoned wife. However, Dr. Wellington also replaces one of his teeth with a capsule containing poison gas, and after the Baron murders the doctor, a traumatized and tortured Leto bites down on the capsule. This fills the Baron's court with poison gas, killing his minions, but the Baron himself is able to survive because he quickly raises his shield once he realizes what's going on. It's a death that is once badass, intense, and tragic, and the character's parting words, "Here I am, here I remain," certainly have a lingering impact, as do Isaac's steely performance and Hans Zimmer's bracingly dramatic score. Number 7. Steppenwolf, Zack Snyder's Justice League. One of the biggest triumphs of Zack Snyder's Justice League is that it transforms the supervillain Steppenwolf from a generic, forgettable CGI monster into a more well-rounded and at times almost sympathetic figure. In Joss Whedon's theatrical cut, Steppenwolf is killed off after being overpowered by the League, succumbing to his fear and then being devoured by his own army of fear-feeding parademons. But he gets a more memorable and frankly much more awesome death in the Snyder cut, where the League teams up to send him permanently packing. First off, Aquaman impales him with his trident and lifts him upwards. Then Superman punches him across the room, and finally Wonder Woman decapitates him midair with her sword. To top it all off, Steppenwolf's corpse continues to arc through the air until it passes through an open portal to Apokolips, where a waiting Darkseid stops his uncle's severed head with his giant foot. In addition to just being an insanely cool way to dispatch a supervillain in a PG-13 superhero movie, it compellingly threw the gauntlet down to Darkseid for a future showdown, which sadly we'll probably never get to actually see on screen. Boo. Number 6. NITARA, Mortal Kombat. The new Mortal Kombat movie certainly had its issues, but it at least finally delivered the long-awaited R-rated fatalities which were infuriatingly absent from the PG-13 rated prior films. By far, the most memorable and even awe-inspiring death in the movie occurs when Kung Lao battles NITARA, and Lao ends up defeating her by throwing his bladed hat to the ground moments before hurling her directly onto it. As NITARA's face makes contact with the spinning blade, it cuts through her head and torso like warm butter, revealing her bisected insides for all to savor while showering a clear clearly delighted Lau with a lot of the red stuff. Better still, the scene was achieved with a winning combination of practical and digital effects, which explains likely why it looks so damn fantastic. It's a shame the film didn't have more creatively brutal fatalities on quite this level, but this kill alone made the whole movie kind of worth it. Number 5. ROMAIN, TITANE. Julia Ducournau's body horror film TITANE is one of the year's most unforgettable works of cinema, an unhinged yet inventive horror about a traumatized woman, Alexia, who operates as a serial killer and harbors a sexual fascination with cars caused by a traumatic car crash as a child. Yeah, it's a wild ride. There are a number of memorable death scenes in this film, such as Alexia stabbing her co-worker Justine through the head with hairpins and then embarking on a killing spree of the other house guests. This includes a man named Romain, who comes down the stairs just moments after Justine's death in order to check on the pair. Alexia then stabs him through the foot with a metal poker before beating him to death with a chair leg and eventually forcing it into his mouth. She then presses down with enough force to pierce his skull, killing him. Though the moment of impact is mercifully kept off screen, we do briefly see his poor remains where a chair leg is pierced through his face. Yikes. Number 4. Aunt May, Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, Spider-Man No Way Home actually features surprisingly little in the way of permanent character deaths, what with all the major superheroes and supervillains living to fight another day. However, it certainly makes its one significant death utterly count, given that it's Peter Parker's beloved Aunt May, who gets her own Uncle Ben moment midway through the movie. After the corrupted Norman Osborn / Green Goblin, played by Willem Dafoe, beats Peter in battle, May comes to her nephew's defense, only for Osborn to send his glider flying through the nearby window, wounding her. Goblin then throws a pumpkin bomb in which Peter tries to deflect, shielding May from the full brunt of the impact while the villain escapes. While it initially seems like May has survived the attack, the moment she tells Peter, "With great power, there must come great responsibility," it's clear she's not long for this world. May then collapses and succumbs to her injuries in Peter's arms, leaving him despondent to battle the multiversal villains while the other Peter Parkers persuade him otherwise. May's death doesn't quite match the devastation of the original Uncle Ben from Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man, but it's a clever and fitting way to rework that iconic moment for this new take on the web-slinger. Number 3. Kate, Fear Street Part 1, 1994. The first part of Netflix's ambitious Fear Street series offers up one of the most ingeniously disgusting death scenes of any recent film, and one which confirmed that this adaptation was seriously upping the maturity level of its teen horror source material. Now, near the end of the movie, one of the remaining characters, Kate, gets into a tussle with the Shadyside Killer, who promptly dispatches her by shoving her head through a bread slicer of all things. The director spared no detail here, as we get to see Kate's noggin be forcibly strained into bloody chunks and then start breaking apart, splashing blood all over the actual bread surrounding her. Now, above all else, and as weird as it is to say, it looks fantastic from a technical perspective and clearly relied heavily on a practical execution, as is appropriate given the very types of horror movies this trilogy is homaging. It always sucks when a likable character doesn't make it to the end, and in Katie's case, she met an especially unpleasant end. Number 2. Everybody in the Jail, Malignant. James Wan's Malignant is one hell of a ride, for better and for worse, climaxing with the absolutely ludicrous reveal that the killer, Gabriel, is the vestigial remains of protagonist Madison's twin brother, who resides within her skull, attached to her brain and spinal cord. Okay then, Gabriel has been committing the killings by taking control of Madison's body, and because he's attached to the back of her skull, he has to manipulate Madison's body backwards, explaining why Gabriel moves in such a strange and unnatural way. This all comes to a pun-incoming head when Madison is arrested and thrown in the lockup with dozens of other criminals in the movie's third act. When her fellow inmates attack her, Gabriel emerges, launching into a brutal rampage where he rips a chunk of a woman's neck out, breaks the arm of another, impales one through the chest with his hand, if you can call it his, stomps one of their heads into a fine paste, and dispatches the instigator of the group by gouging her eyes out and using her as a human shield when a cop opens fire. After Gabriel escapes from lockup, though, the mayhem continues, and we see Gabriel using his bladed weapons to slice his way through a fleet of armed cops in delightfully acrobatic fashion. Now, Malignant is a kind of terrible movie in a lot of other respects, but it's tough not to applaud Wan's commitment to the absurdity of his premise in these moments. And number 1, James Bond, No Time to Die. But no death scene this past year has been more talked about or proven more divisive with the core fanbase than James Bond's demise at the end of No Time to Die. Even with this being Daniel Craig's final outing as 007, the prospect of James Bond actually dying on screen and breaking with almost 60 years of tradition seemed practically inconceivable. But quite fittingly, the most emotionally complex, tortured and visceral Bond era of them all saw 007's life come to an end after the villain infects him with nanobots programmed to kill Madeline and his daughter Matilda. After killing the villain, Bond Bond reasons that a life without being able to touch his family would be unendurable, and so after a tearful phone call goodbye, he waits for the incoming missile barrage to destroy him along with the nanobot factory. It's a devastating scene, but also an admirably bold one, and one that the franchise will likely never be able to get away with again, at least not with nearly this level of impact. Between the direction, performances, and again Hans Zimmer's affecting score, this was a deservedly tear-jerking send-off for one of the finest Bond eras ever. And there we go, my friends. Those were the best movie deaths of 2021. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there, alright? But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Even though we explored some fun, crazy, and over-the-top deaths in the movies of last year, obviously death is a very permanent fixture of our real existence, and it's not an easy one to go through. But what I want to tell you right now is something that was told to me when I was younger, and that is that even though losing somebody is incredibly difficult, take the lessons and the love that they gave you and move on to create a better existence for yourself and those around you. Try not to go on living in their shadow, but use the light they give you to go on and make everything else around you a bit brighter. I hope that helps you if you're going through some tough times, and big love to you if you are. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon.